Hey, all right, I won't give up my day job. So listen, it's Ghana Month. It starts here. This is your official station for Ghana Month, and our conversations throughout the month are designed to improve our nation. Today, the question is very simple. When you mention the national of Japan, you think of honor. You mention a German, you think of precision. You mention a French, you think of passion. When you mention a Ghanaian, what do you think of? Our guests to help us have this conversation, two people I always love speaking to. Dr. Charles Wereko-Brobby is the Chief Policy Analyst at the Ghana Institute of Public Policy Options, GIPO, and Professor Baffour Agyemang-Duah is the former UN Advisor on Governance. Gentlemen, good morning to you both and happy Ghana Month.
Good morning, Kojo.
Good morning, Kojo, and frankly...
Well, since we're doing Ghana marching.
Yeja.
That's it.
Kojo, I would say
Prof.
that I'm thrilled to have Dr. Brobby with me. It's been a long time, and I'm delighted to be with him.
Indeed. It promises to be a sparkling conversation. Now, here's how I want us to begin. We are about to assess ourselves, but maybe it will be interesting to find out what others think of us. Now, everybody in Ghana who is asked who is a Ghanaian, what is Ghana good at, is likely to mention hospitality. We've been saying it for decades. But I want us to hear what a visitor to Ghana, someone who was here over the Christmas period, thinks about our efforts at hospitality. This is a broadcaster from the United States called Charlemagne the God, popular radio personality. This is what he said about Ghana's hospitality.
Since you started off with the worst thing about the trip, I'll start off with the worst thing about the trip. The service.
Wait. What do you mean by that?
The service.
They don't get service.
Let me tell you something. No. I ain't talking about phone service. I'm talking about service.
Yeah, the service. Yeah, they don't get it. Yeah.
Let me tell you something about service in Ghana.
Yeah.
It is the nicest, most terrible service you will ever receive. These people are so nice. These people are so loving. When they say welcome home, they really mean that shit. You ever walk into your parents' house and they're like, "Oh, happy to see nobody doing shit for you."
Yes, yeah.
You got to do it. You have to go do everything that they're not gonna fix your plate. None of that. The service is terrible, but they're so nice about it that you can't even be mad.
Yeah.
So,
but then you're like, well, this is why your economy is like,
I guess. You know what I mean? I mean, if you're trying to be a service industry, you know what I mean? I don't know, but that is one thing that you even hear people from Ghana talk about. They talk about like that is something that we have to tighten up, especially being that we're getting such an influx of tourists, not just from America, but from Europe. There's so many black people from so many different places going to Ghana. You know what I mean?
It's not a Ghanaian problem. In Colombia, I saw the same thing.
Really?
It's like I have to ask for the check 4 different times before I got it.
Really?
4 different. Can I have the check? I'm trying to pay you.
Yeah, but the check is fine. But when you got to wait 2.5 hours for food.
Oh no, that's great.
3 hours for food.
No, that's great.
And this is when I was told to come to this place because it would be prompt service.
Oh wow!
But other than that,
if you're waiting, I can't imagine how long the other people are waiting.
They don't care who you are.
They do.
You think so?
I think they do. I mean, because you're an ambassador for the country, you're going to talk about your experience to all these other people, and you're going to convince them to potentially
I still
go.
had a great time.
So that's what Charlemagne the God said about our service, which is really the main product of hospitality, right? Those are his views. We'll hear from our guests in just a moment. But before that, we went into town yesterday, spoke to some foreign nationals living in Ghana, and we asked them, what are Ghanaians known for? Let's hear them.
What comes to mind when I think of Ghana? Shrewdness of leadership. Kwame Nkrumah, down the line to Jerry Rawlings, and Kofi Annan.
When I think about Ghana, I think about peace. I think Ghana is a peaceful country where people don't really like conflict, and people are able to welcome and interact with diverse cultures very easily. I think even within Ghana, the different cultures are living very much in harmony together, and it's quite beautiful to observe and to be part of.
When I think about Ghana, I think about hospitality. I think about just rich culture, food, great vibes. I just remember my very first trip to Ghana was amazing, and it was magical, and everybody was so hospitable. When I think about Ghanaians, I think about the ultimate spiritual, because it was so interesting to see and go to like the barber shop or different places that I went. I remember going to Cape Coast and hearing on the big speakers gospel music, like everywhere I went. So I think about spirituality when I think about Ghanaians and having high morale. So I would like to think that they have high morale because they are very spiritual beings.
When I think of Ghana, I think of the rich culture that has been maintained. Some places or countries in Africa has forgotten about those, but Ghana still promotes and still holds the flag, according to me, with regards to maintaining culture and doing things the way they were done before. Although the Western world has attacked the traditions and, the influenced that we do things their way, but Ghana is still, holding the culture. And I also think of kings, the rich colors in Ghana. I also think about gold. I mean, it's quite a beautiful country and it's green as well. So I know that a lot of things grow in Ghana. And it's such a beautiful country, and its people, they are very welcoming and accommodative to foreigners like me.
I just think of culture when I think of Ghana, and more importantly, I see the parallels in Black American culture. Now that I've, had the opportunity and the privilege to visit Ghana and talking with my brothers and my fiance and, family and friends who are Ghanaian, and, realizing we experience a lot of the same things. And, even though the colonizers tried to rip our heritage and culture and history from us, it's still endured. So when I think of Ghana, I think of culture, and I think of Ghana as home.
All right, let's hear from our guest. Dr. Wereko-Brobby, if you don't mind, I'll start with you. So, according to these foreign nationals in Ghana, who, let's allow for a certain amount of diplomacy because they would obviously want to do that. They say Ghana is known for good leaders, high morals, hospitable people, and rich, well-preserved culture. Is that your take as well?
Bits of each. Certainly, when I've been part of Ghana from the get-go, from the start of Ghana, and then it was were held up very high as a torch of the black people and black Africa, and everybody wanted to be a Ghanaian from all over. Every black person in the world wanted to be Ghanaian. Unfortunately, we've fallen off the pedestal on the leadership one, even though we try to pretend that we are where we started. We've gone from the best of everything black to possibly amongst the worst. The question of the people, I will distinguish between welcoming and hospitable and service. Yes, we are very welcoming, and Ghanaians on the whole will bend over backwards to help or be nice to strangers and foreigners, strangers being including both local and foreigners. When it comes to the service, yes, we really fall short, as your first guest talked about, but it may be a symptom of the fact that we see ourselves as leaders, not servants. But yes, but I think the Ghanaian today, sadly, has become a self-centered, looking after number one person who does not even accept or want to be part of the concept of a Ghanaian nation, but is looking out for themselves to see how they can get out of any difficulties and get their own without thinking that without a society you can't really do very much. So that's been my experience.
So, we tend to look out for number one, as you point out. But you said something very interesting. You said that our poor service is partly due to the fact that we see ourselves as leaders and not servants, which is why perhaps we don't do so well at providing service.
Yes.
That is very likely to be the case for many Ghanaians, but it's also the case for people like, say, the Emiratis. When you visit, Saudi Arabia or the Emirates, you'll find that the people of the indigents of that country are very proud and very
Yes.
but I don't see it affecting their provision of service in the way that it does to us. What do you think accounts for the difference?
Well, because I think corporate Ghana does not appreciate and understand that when you are providing service to people who are patronizing your products, the first thing that the patrons will come across are those who are providing or selling or providing the service to them. And corporate Ghana tends not to spend enough money on training the Ghanaian, not to serve, but to make the shop or what the goods attractive enough, and for the person who is gone there to be interested in actually with their money or whatever they have to do. So I think it's a problem. As you said, the Emiratis, they do it well because they understand business and external trade and all its ramifications. When I first went to the Middle East, it really was full of duty-free shops where everybody knew that the fortunes of whoever was there depended on it. So I think it's not, and that's part of our problem. We tend to think that things can just drop from heaven and it's all right. So the service bit is, I think, very much a fault of corporate Ghana in all its manifestations.
So I suppose if you were describing the typical Ghanaian, you wouldn't say that they were particularly good at business, would you?
Well, no, they are not, but they are good at talking business and very bad at delivering. And that's very clear from the current position in business all over the world. That yes, we talk a lot. The fact that we are totally dependent on imports for everything in this country tells you that we are incapable of handling these things ourselves.
Prof, I'd love to bring you in at this point, and I suppose the question remains. I mean, who is, to you, the Ghanaian?
Very, very important question relating to what you may call national identity.
Identity, yeah.
I remember, like Charles said, I've lived through this country from its beginning. And I know that in the 1960s, Ghanaians were very proud because of what Nkrumah introduced, a concept he called the African personality. Those of us who were members of the Young Pioneers then, who were taught certain values. And I think the issue of leadership comes from that angle, that the leadership that Nkrumah offered, which was somehow continued by a few of his successors, gave that strong picture to the outside world of what Ghana is. People considered Ghana to be the Mecca of Africa's liberation at the time. But I think since that time, a lot of things have happened. And I think part of it has been the political instability we experienced from the 60s to the early 90s, I should say. And now, it's true, and I listened to the comments by those you interviewed. Most foreigners will look at Ghana as being very hospitable. And of course, we are proud of our culture also. But that, to me, it's all right, but it's not enough. Because the examples that you gave of countries, like the Asian countries, they are proud to have honor to the extent that even when a public official does something wrong, he's quick to accept, and quite often even resign from those positions. That's a great value for people to have. We talk of Britain, you mentioned fairness. That's also a good value to have. We can cite all this across the world. But when we come to Ghana, it seems to me that it's hard for us to call something a national value, especially over the past 30 years. I'm not sure what I can single out to use as identifying us as Ghanaians based on a value system. If anything at all, I think we can look at the values that our politicians have developed over the past 30 years. And then, of course, this issue of service that Charles mentioned really boils down to the attitude of Ghanaians. The attitude of Ghanaians, which includes falsehoods and untruthfulness in our dealings, a certain hidden hypocrisy in the Ghanaian. Even when we talk of hospitality, Kojo, at times I wonder whether it's a sincere hospitality. Don't we have some kind of innate preference for something foreign, especially if that foreign is a white person? We go down. And in fact, with the service, at times we go to places, people, the servants will be quick to attend to the whites, and even to the black people. I think we live in a state of both. You see, so it's something hard for me to put my finger on. But I think overall, Kojo, I would say that we are a certain sense of value that clearly will identify us. Of course, I appreciate the fact that for the 30 years we have been peaceful, especially when it comes to elections. The elections, we don't know what really happens. As hospitality, yes, our food, our culture. Every country has food and culture and all that. So I'm saying, if we are talking about current trends, then I'm sorry, I don't have much to recommend.
That's you've isolated the idea of having a national value as part of our identity, and the fact that there is hard to point a finger at any such value. What was the original intent of the founders of Ghana? What did they want our national value or values to be?
Wow, this is a very interesting but tough question. Because in my own reflections, I've developed something I call the foundational issues of any nation. When you are founding a nation, if you go to America, you recall that the so-called founding fathers agreed on certain tenets of how to rule themselves and how, all kinds of things. Of course, at the time, they did not consider the minorities, the black people, as part of them. So they were seriously discriminated against. Other than that, they laid down certain values during the foundation of the United States in 1776. So when you come to Ghana and look at the founding fathers, that is to say those who really seriously started the independence struggle, 1947 and up, the UGCC before coming to CPP with Nkrumah, there was a serious lack of consensus on how this country should be governed. And because of that, we missed the boat laying down certain fundamental values that we cherish. Opposition started right from the beginning, like in the United States, where towards the independence there was a unified stance, to create a nation. Actually, we made something there, and this is a long thing. I don't want to waste time on that. But your question is simple. What really did our founding fathers lay down for us? If you look at the early constitution, that lasted a few years, and then Nkrumah modified it. Then 1916, we changed it. I think we lost something there. And opposition to that, throughout our history, has denied us the chance to build something for ourselves. Again, this is an issue that I think we need to explore further. But I have a strong sense that we need something.
Dr. Wereko-Brobby, I'd love to hear your take on this same concept of what what originally we were meant to be. You've also been a Ghanaian from the beginning. In your own experience, how were we planning, to shape our identity, and at what point did we, as Prof. Baffour says, miss something?
Well, I think the identity issue, you need to separate the political identity from the social identity. The political identity was wrought with difficulties from the beginning. It's what I characterize the now or the appropriate time debate, which still is rages in Ghana's politics. We have essentially two sides of a divide, and they cannot agree on what is good for Ghana. Out of independence, Nkrumah became leader, and for a very long time, the ideas of Pan-Africanism, etc., shaped Ghana's role in the world and the leadership. It didn't take long after the military interventions for us to resort back to this to and fro, which still the Fourth Republic has now become MPP v NDC, and the Ghanaian is lost in all of this. I think we've totally lost our identity politically or as a nation in all of this flawed debate and selfish debate between people who are pushing a political label just to reap the benefits, and a meritorious society where we see ourselves as Ghanaians and will ensure that things are done for the benefit of all. But today, largely, the Ghanaian I see as people who are wanting to get everything from nothing input. And I think it defines just about everything we do. The person who is employed in a shop to provide service wants to be able to get their personal benefits without putting in the work, without understanding that it is only when the patrons part with their money that you're also going to be rewarded. It's a totally minimalist approach in this country. We love the concept of a society. And I really cannot see that unless we get back to see what that Ghana wants. What do we as Ghanaians want? What should define our nation? We tend to live on our laurels a lot. Like, for example, we haven't won the Africa Cup for about 40 years, but every time we go into a tournament, the Ghanaian wanting everything out of nothing says, "Oh, we are going to win this cup." We pump in lots of money so that people benefit personally, and then the nation never makes the success we've been promised by those new will never get there. So I think the politics of division has largely infected the kind of people that we've turned out to be. Cynical, self-centered, felicitous, etc., etc.
You talked about how we tend to live on our past glories, and always refer to our achievements of old.
Yeah.
And I mean,
the best education in the world, the best football nation in the world, the best people, etc. But it's always you're talking about 50 or 60 years ago.
Yeah. What does that say? I mean, every leader we've ever had is likely to lay claim to moving our nation forward in one way or the other. And yes, when you look around, I mean, there are things that exist in Ghana that weren't in existence when the nation was founded, 66 years ago. But if all our glory is in the past, then have we really moved forward as a nation? Can we genuinely say that we are progressing?
No, I don't think we are progressing. And I think Baffour put his finger on the nail that from the beginning, right from the beginning, we knew we wanted independence, but our leaders could not even agree when we should have independence and how we should have independence. And that failure of politicians to actually nurture the concept of a Ghanaian and what the Ghanaian thinks our society should aspire to and what our people deserve has dogged us throughout our almost 65 years. And never mind who we've had as leader, the talk has always been about what their political, personal conception of what Ghanaians want instead of what we sort of agree generally is as a people, what our aspirations are. So personal political aspirations, never mind the leadership, and even included in Nkrumah's, have always defined how we move forward.
Right.
And you get this yo-yoing effect, which at the end doesn't really move the nation forward in a positive developmental way.
Wow. Well, if you just joined us, we're trying to answer the question, who is a Ghanaian? It's easy to identify the character and virtue of people from other countries, but when it comes to Ghana, we can't place our fingers on it. We've been all talking about it, including you. Dr. Charles Wereko-Brobby, Professor Baffour, Agyemang-Duah have been our guests. And so it's clear that Ghana's identity is not clear. But what should it be? What would be a great virtue for Ghanaians to pursue and be known for around the world? I'm going to start with Dr. Wereko-Brobby on this one. If you were to pick, maybe a top three virtues that Ghanaians should strive to be known for, what would you say they should be? Do we have Dr. Wereko-Brobby on the line?
Yeah, could you speak up loudly?
Oh, forgive me. I was saying, if we were to decide for ourselves what virtues we should be known for as Ghanaians, what would you suggest should be perhaps our top three?
Top three virtues.
Yeah.
I'll start off with what I was taught when I was growing up. Capable of managing our own affairs. That was what Ghana was born with. And that's what for a long time as I was growing up we believed, that we could do our own thing and we could not just be called Ghana, but manage Ghana as good as any other nation in the world's community. That would be number one. Two, we must learn to understand that to develop a merit-based society which is looking after everybody's interests and not push this concept of fidelity to some particular people as being the basis for advancing your own personal interests and not thinking of Ghana as a whole. And the third virtue, which relates to the first two, is that we are people from very many ethnic backgrounds, but the strange thing is that there's a common theme even amongst all the many ethnic groups, and that's the concept of looking after each other. And I think we need to return to the concept of looking after each other's needs and using that as a solid platform to build a nation that cares for each other and that makes sure that people are not sitting around waiting to be given handouts, but they're actually expecting that if they put in of their best, then they will get the requisite results. I really think that, if you permit me to sort of, during the break, I listened to an advert and I burst out laughing. Here we are in a country where we are facing challenges with basic vaccines to protect our children. And what did I hear? An advert dealing with a global pandemic, but even that advert was supported by somebody else, not even our own initiative. So our values and our priorities are being shaped not by ourselves and the needs of Ghana, but by what we can get from other persons to pay for it.
Yeah.
It's a very serious thing, and I'm sorry to be pessimistic, but we must actually drag ourselves up and start behaving as a nation state, proud of itself and proud of its varied backgrounds, and wanting to make sure that we succeed as a whole, not part of political fiefdoms.
That's interesting. I think that feeds right into your first virtue, which would be the Ghanaian is capable of managing his own affairs. That would be a nice thing to be said of us, by the international community. The second one was merit-based society. To meet a Ghanaian and say, this man comes from a merit-based society. That would be nice. And the last one, of course, the Ghanaian is known for looking after each other. There are countries that have that reputation. In England, Indian families are known to look after each other and help each other, up the ladder of society. So it would be a nice thing for Ghanaians to be known for as well. Professor Baffour Agyemang-Duah, what would your top 3 virtues be that Ghanaians should strive for?
Well, Kojo, I think I should say that I associate very fully with what Charles has just laid out. Because the notion of managing our affairs, as Kwame Nkrumah said, is a very strong value we need to develop. And I'll stress on that. Some years past, there was a national program that was tied to what we call self-help projects. If you drove through villages and other places, some new projects were identified as self-help projects. And that value has disappeared completely. And as Charles said, and when you think of it, you realize that we have become a nation of beggars. We become a nation of beggars. And this has been pushed by our political leaders. Because there are certain domestic initiatives we can do. Of course, I appreciate some of them by this and past governments. But essentially, even such projects are expected to be supported by foreign funds. The whole nation of self-help has completely died to the extent that these days, oftentimes, a president goes to a rural community and the request of the chief and his people is to build a toilet for the people. It happens. So this notion of managing our own affairs is not just at the national level. It should be at the local levels. And if we did that, I think we can begin to develop some pride on what we do ourselves. So for me, that's a key value we need to develop. And I think this is tied to our political structure. I'm one individual who's dead. I'm opposed to this centralized system that we have. That is what has killed individual initiatives at the local levels. Everybody looks up to the central government to provide every single thing in their communities, and it is wrong. And I think our political leaders, for all kinds of reasons, seem to enjoy that power is so centralized in their hands. Somebody from Boku or from Sunyani or somewhere has to come and plead with the minister in Accra just to get a 3-room classroom building. And this is what, for me, is fueling this whole notion of go out and borrow to the extent that today we have borrowed, we have hit the ceiling, and nobody even wants to give us anything. And now we are going begging, you see. So I think that national self-pride is dead because our leaders have failed in leading us to become proud Ghanaians. So for me, that is very much important thing we need to look at.
Okay. To get back our national pride and our ability to help ourselves and to be able to localize leadership so we don't depend on others to do things for us. I like that. Yeah, sense of pride and self-help. Nice. So we got one
And
overarching virtue from you, Prof. Yeah.
Yeah, I think there's something I need to add to this.
Sure.
Because when Charles spoke, it struck me. And Charles is if you know him, he's a very thoughtful person. Look at this. We have individuals becoming leaders and having individual aspirations rather than national aspirations.
Yeah.
That's why somebody become president and say, I will build 200 schools.
Mm-hmm.
Another one comes, I will build 111 hospitals.
Mm.
They give these promises because for them, this is what will satisfy them. Of course, in the context of national development, I understand that.
Mm.
But because we don't have a unified approach to development, we tend to get truncated approaches. That's why a government leaves office, and you notice projects that were initiated by that government will be abandoned for new ones to come on board. So in this country, we have uncompleted projects scattered all over the country.
Mm.
So that tells you about what I think is inherent in Charles's point about individual aspirations rather than the national aspiration. And that, again, is something we need to address either by strengthening the NDPC, which is supposed to give us a grand plan for development, which no government has respected, even though it's in the Constitution, so that we can have a focus on what we want as a nation, but not this reversal and forward movement and backward movement that we've been having over the past 30 years.
Yes, I'm getting two things from you. The first one is our ability to help ourselves.
Yes.
And then this point you just made, that we should put public good over private interest.
Yeah. Yes. Yeah, you're right.
Yeah.
Because even though politicians will couch their programs as national development projects, which I don't dispute, but if you look at it closely, they tend to derive some personal, what is the word? I wouldn't say joy, but it's their personal vision.
Yeah.
It's not in the context of a national vision.
Yeah.
Because if there was a national vision, and we all know that over the next 5 years we can build 200 schools, you cannot promise people I can build 200 schools in 2 years. In the same way, if we have a national vision that says we need hospitals in our country, it can be a 10-year project. It cannot be a 2-year project where you can promise people can build 111 hospitals.
Yeah.
It's not possible.
Yeah.
So I think our leaders have been looking to our development in more parochial terms than in the broader national interest.
Okay, well, I guess this leaves only one question. How do we do this? How do we establish the Ghanaian identity? Who should do what? What is step one? Whose job should it be to do what in order for us to be able to have this conversation maybe 10, 20 years from now and be able to easily identify the Ghanaian? Doc, I'll start with you.
Who should do what? I think all of us need to do a bit of some of the parts so that we can get a whole.
Yeah.
Firstly, we should stop thinking that this country and its development and its aspirations depends on politicians and their words. We tend to put too much to what politicians say and enjoy the competition that they have in terms of trying to convince us that they have all the solutions to all our problems. And even when they fail to deliver, those who are in search of their personal greed will want to believe that there's nothing wrong. I think we need to, it's a good start that this conversation should start a discussion on what is Ghana and what makes Ghana tick and what will push Ghana forward. It should be, it should be a broad discussion amongst ordinary Ghanaians. Too many discussions in this country, the immediate thing that happens is that those who are leading the discussions start off with politicians, and unfortunately, those politicians are selling. They are like the people on the buses who sell you one little drug that cures everything. They have all the answers, and their followers believe they have all the answers, except that they come and make the same mistakes as their alternative made. So we really need to start thinking Ghanaian. What is a Ghanaian? What are the basic aspirations of Ghanaians? What are the basic ethics and standards? And one of the things I noticed that we condemn things in Ghana not on the basis of good or evil, but on the basis of politics. If one political party does something, their supporters will see it as good. If the alternate comes and does the same thing, it will all be condemned.
Yeah.
So I really think let's start learning to think Ghana. Think Ghana. Don't think NPP. Don't think NDC.
Yeah.
Let's think Ghana.
Yeah.
And then once we start the conversation, we should try and translate that into governance in the coming years, where we do not go and promote and think that one political party is going to solve all our problems and drop all our needs like manna from heaven. We should start getting those who want to get into public office to talk together and think what's the best for Ghana. I remember sometime there was a horrible discussion as to whether secondary school should be 3 years or 4 years. And nobody gave any cogent, rational reasons except that I'm MPP and I think it should be 4, and I'm NDC, I think it should be 3.
Yeah.
The issue as to why it should be 3 or why it should be 4, or whether it will be best for all Ghanaians, nobody ever got to it. So I think there's quite a lot of work to be done. But if we don't do that work, I'm afraid this country will just go to the dogs.
Thanks for that, Dr. Charles Wereko-Brobby. Clearly, everybody has a role to play. Prof, I think we will wrap with you, and the question is the same. You've mentioned the NDPC. Should that be the institution that leads in setting a national identity, or is there a role to be played by other institutions, maybe the presidency, maybe the NCCE? What are your thoughts?
Frankly, any change can come about through enlightened leadership. And our political system has given us the way to select such leaders. Therefore, Ghanaians should become conscious of the kinds of people we elect to lead us. Because if we continue to select people who don't come with new insights on how we develop our country, the kinds of value systems that we need to uphold and all, then I'm afraid that we are perpetuating what we all don't like. So leadership is key. Then we have to look at the educational system. One thing that strikes me, of course, we are attempting to reform the educational system now. We are highlighting vocational training and all. Those are close training. I appreciate that because we think unemployment has become a problem. But the fact is that every nation thrives on certain key values. Every nation. Okay? Yeah. If you go to the so-called advanced democracies, law enforcement of laws and regulations are key, something that they cherish. So that even if you are president or whoever you are, if you are caught by the law, generally speaking, you face the law. That is a value system that we don't have that yet. Okay? So, what makes that possible in this country is the kinds of lessons that children are taught from kindergarten all the way to tertiary institutions. Okay? So, I think we need to look critically at our educational system in terms of the content of what we teach our children. I haven't taken serious time to examine what we're teaching, but clearly, from the behavior of people who get out of our schools, I don't see anything telling me that they have been imbued with certain values that sustain the nation building and all. We don't have that. So educational system is a powerful tool that we need to use to change that. Final point, which is a nebulous term, but nonetheless, let me say it, resetting our mental attitude. Reset our mental attitude. Because clearly from the conversation this morning, one important component that seems to be letting us down is the Ghanaian attitude towards almost everything, towards work. And there are so many horrible stories of Ghanaians collapsing businesses because of how employees behave. And we can go on and on and on. But changing our attitude also means that mendacity, which seems to be becoming part of our political culture, we need to stop. You can't rule a country by telling your people lies all the time, promising things you can never do, or because you want political power. So this is a challenge to those who emerge into leadership. I think mendacity should not be part of our political narratives. So for me, these are three key areas that I think as we seek to find our way forward, these are the things that we should be looking at.
This has been so enlightening, as we expected it would be. A big thank you to our two guests this morning, Dr. Charles Wereko-Brobby, Chief Policy Analyst at the Ghana Institute of Public Policy Options, JIPO, and Professor Baffour Agyemang-Duah, former UN advisor on governance. We can't thank you both enough for your time with us this morning.
Thank you.
Ray, I've made so many notes.
Very wonderful thoughts there. And even though by the end of the day, I think what we have agreed on is that there's a certain value system that will underpin a national identity couching. That value system, if you have it, if you teach it right from the beginning, the reference that's made to the Japanese, you can see that right from the home through to the schools, there's a national culture that we see them play football, lose games, and still they clean up the stadium. Everybody knows that they are going to be decent. They don't engage in the act. In fact, we are all applauding the kind of education system that people like Finland have, because it's predominantly teaching values and innovation. So basically, if you do not inculcate, let's say we've forgotten or we have given up on the elderly people in the country, if we do not start from a very young generation, inculcating in them right from the family through to the engagements in the various social units, a certain socialization that says that you can only speak the truth under every circumstance. That should be your fundamental thinking. Truth first, everything else. And when we put in them nation state, not ethnicity first, not my parochial, religious, or whichever group I come from first, when we put in them that communal feeling that we fail or get together or we lose together, so whatever you are doing, be it in school, whether you think you want to, whatever you want to be, it should be because you can get others collectively to come together to do it. If we do not inculcate these things, we would have these conversations when Ghana is at 70, when Ghana is at 80, at 120, because fundamentally, we are still not fixing the problem from the basis. So to me, I get all of these wonderful thoughts coming up, except that we are not thinking about the next 50 years from today. And we are not imparting that level of consciousness in the generation that will be leading the next 50 years. And for what we are giving to them today, if you ask your child, ask any other child today, what are the elements that are feeding their thinking when they go to school today? Are they being taught communalism the best ways? Are they being taught nation state? Are they being taught to be 100% truthful, no matter what the odds are?
Yeah. You know, when everybody was mentioning their top 3 and all that, I listed 3 as well. I thought, look, I would love as a Ghanaian that when I walk into a room, people will say, if he's a Ghanaian, then he's honest.
Yeah.
Like how you say if he's Japanese,
Yeah.
then he has honor.
Yeah.
Or if he's German, then he's precise. I want someone to say if he's a Ghanaian, then chances are he's an honest man. If he's a Ghanaian, he's creative. I would like to be known for coming from a group of people who solve problems, who are inventive. If he's a Ghanaian, he's resilient. I want people to think that as for me, until I get it right, I will never give up. When my child grows up and he walks out into the world, that's how I'd like the world to see him. What about you? Use the hashtag JoySMS. Tell us, what are those 3 virtues that you would like to be recognized for as a Ghanaian?